All right, let's talk about a huge problem in Web3. You can build the most incredible, game-changing product, right? But that's no guarantee anyone's going to use it. So, how do you actually break through all that noise and build a project that actually sticks around? Well, that is exactly what we are getting into today. So, does this sound familiar to you? You're shipping features like crazy, you're hitting all those roadmap goals you set, but the community, it's just not growing. The conversation isn't scaling and you just feel completely stuck. Look, if that's you, you are definitely not alone. Let's really break down why this happens. Okay, it really all boils down to one thing: perception. How does the market see you? On one side, you've got the promoter. This is kind of the default mode for most people, right? You're obsessed with your token, you're just reacting to whatever the market does, and you're constantly fighting for attention. The real goal is to shift over to the other side, to become a leader. This is someone who's focused on the entire market, not just their project. They're the ones shaping the conversation, and because of that, they just naturally attract attention. And that first mode, the promoter, well, that leads us right into something we can call the promotion trap. It's what most founders fall into by default, but honestly, it's a total strategic dead end. And this is the fundamental mistake right here. Most founders are just building products. They're focused on the output. But here's the thing, in a market this noisy, the best product, it doesn't just win on its own. The project with the most authority, the one with the most trust, that's the one that captures everyone's attention. So what does this promotion trap actually look like day to day? Well, it usually follows a very common but also very flawed playbook. I mean, on the surface, this stuff all looks super productive, right? You're staying active, you're posting updates about price, you're celebrating roadmap milestones, announcing new partnerships. You might even be writing those super long threads explaining your tokenomics or jumping on whatever the latest crypto trend is. The problem? All of this, it just keeps you trapped inside your own little project bubble. And the consequences of being stuck in that bubble? They're actually pretty severe. This whole playbook, it creates really low trust because it's all about you. You end up with zero differentiation. You just blend in with thousands of other projects doing the exact same thing. And maybe worst of all, you give up any control of the narrative. You just become another project screaming for attention instead of commanding it. But there is a much more powerful way to do this. It just requires a really fundamental shift in how you think. It's time for what we'll call the leadership shift. Okay, listen up, because this right here, this is probably the single most important idea we're going to talk about. Your content is not supposed to promote your project. It's supposed to position you. Let that sink in. The main job of your content isn't to shill your token. It's to position you, the founder, as a real authority, a thought leader. And when you get that, everything changes. And this whole practice, it has a name. It's called narrative leadership. See, it's not just about talking about what you're building. It's way bigger than that. It's about actively shaping how the entire market thinks about your category. It's about breaking down trends and, this is the key part, sharing your unique perspective on where the whole industry is going. So, your content does a complete 180. You stop obsessing over the micro details of your project and you zoom way out to your macro level thinking on the entire space. Because let's be real, at the end of the day, people don't just invest in code, they invest in conviction. And this completely changes how you think about the value of your content. It's no longer just some disposable tweet you fire off. Think of each piece of content like a brick. It becomes a foundational block in building something much bigger, the intellectual infrastructure of your reputation and your authority. Okay, so that's the why. That's the big idea. But now you're probably asking how. How do I actually do this? Well, let's dive into a really clear and simple framework you can use. And here it is. It's the 40-30-20-10 content split. Now take a look at this. Notice what's way down at the bottom with the smallest slice of the pie. Yeah, that's your project updates. The vast majority of your content, a full 90% of it, is actually focused on building your authority in completely different ways. So let's break down exactly what each of these pieces means. First up, the biggest chunk, 40%. This is all about market and narrative analysis. So what does that mean? It means if you're building, say, a new layer 2, you stop just talking about your own transaction speeds. Instead, you start analyzing the entire future of Ethereum scaling. You're breaking down the pros and cons of all the different approaches out there. The goal is to become the go-to person for understanding the whole landscape. All right, next step 30% is for builder transparency. This is where you really pull back the curtain and you show people how the sausage is made. You let them see the messy process, explain why you chose one tech stack over another. Talk about the really tough trade offs you had to make on a new feature. This isn't showing weakness, it's how you build genuine, authentic trust. Then we've got 20% dedicated to your category opinions. This is where you have to be willing to take a stand, have a sharp, intelligent point of view. Don't be afraid to challenge what everyone else is saying. If you think the current NFT meta is totally broken, explain exactly why and then propose a better way forward. Just agreeing with everyone builds you absolutely nothing. A strong, well-reasoned perspective, that's what makes people remember you. And finally, we get to that last little 10%, your actual project updates. Now, of course, you're still going to share them, but you do it strategically. Every single update needs to tie back to and reinforce that larger narrative you're building. This completely flips the script, you see. You move from just mindless promotion to really smart, strategic positioning. So when you actually start putting this framework into practice, oh man, you unlock a completely different level of growth. This is how you get the ultimate competitive advantage. And the psychological edge you get is just huge. Think about it. Hype. It's super fragile, right? It creates these big temporary spikes that bring a lot of people in, but they leave just as fast as they came. Authority, on the other hand, is durable. It creates consistency. It builds a foundation of trust that actually makes people want to stick around for the long haul. And the payoff here is so tangible. I'm talking about building way stronger trust before you even launch a token, which is just priceless. This leads to way better community retention, it gives you more resilient liquidity after you launch, and it basically acts like a magnet for the absolute best long-term investors and builders, the people who are drawn to your actual vision. What this all does, ultimately, is create a massive power shift. You get to stop desperately chasing eyeballs and begging for engagement. Instead, by becoming the recognized voice of your category, attention, opportunity, and even talent, it all starts to flow naturally to you. So let's just end on this one thought. In Web3, the founders who really win in the long run, they aren't just the ones who build great products. They're the ones who build authority, who shape how people think, and who, at the end of the day, control the narrative. So the only real question left for you is, are you going to be just another promoter, or are you going to be a leader?
Subscribe and visit Web3 Newswire for visibility and credibility of your Web3 projects.